travel photography just feels different. If you've shot any, then you'll know exactly what I mean, and if you haven't, then you're just gonna have to take it from me. There's a feeling that comes with travel photography that you just don't find anywhere else, and it's a feeling that I crave. I can see myself chasing it for a lifetime, only to get just a taste of it for the 1 week a year I managed to get away. Well, I had one of those weeks just recently, and me and my family went on a holiday to Scotland and we explored Argyll, a beautiful little slice of the world. And naturally, me being me, I took a canny few photos. And whilst doing so, I thought to myself, why does this feel so different? And I said to myself I was going to figure that out. Well, I've got a few theories, but before I get to those, I think it'd be a good idea to try and put that feeling into words, which is not an easy thing to do, by the way. So I've got it written here. This, to me, is my best articulation of what travel photography feels like, to me at least. If it wasn't already clear, I think very highly of photography. I could not imagine my life without it. Many of my memories are only as vivid as they are because they're backed up by photos. So even though the lens I view photography through is rose tinted, travel photography feels romanticized. Like it doesn't get any better. Like all the best parts of photography are gathered as one. But why does it feel like that? What does being on holiday, traveling, do to change the feeling of photography? How does that work? Here's what I think. A break from normality. This one's pretty simple and probably pretty obvious as well. If you shoot for a hobby or for work and you're shooting regularly or even every day, then it just becomes a part of normality. That is your norm. That is your everyday. When you go on holiday or you travel somewhere, you get a little break from that. And I think because you're doing something out of the ordinary and you're breaking away from the mundane, the norm, the monotony of everyday life, you approach those days differently. And I think in the same way, you approach photography differently as well, which is in the same vein as emotion. When you're traveling, I certainly find you feel freer. Like all of the stresses and the weight is left at home and you don't have to worry about that anymore. There's a lightness to the travelling, even if you're packing heavy. And on top of that, there's a lot of emotions that you feel when you're away that you just don't feel when you're at home, or at least when you're on holiday, they're highly heightened. Things like joy, awe, calm and peace, excitement, nervousness, these things you feel when you're away on your trips, and naturally that's going to have an effect on the images that you make and the way that you make them. The different emotional state that you're in, it makes you perceive the world around you differently, which therefore makes you perceive photography differently, which therefore gives the photos you take a completely different perspective. Then there's novelty. When we were away, we stayed in a cottage, a lovely little cottage with a gorgeous view, and it was on some farmland owned by the people who owned obviously the farm and the farmland. And we got speaking to the owners, and one of the owners said that they no longer really notice the sound of the birds. Well, that's all we could hear. It was loud, and I mean, I love birds, so I was buzzing with it, but that was the only sound we could hear. It was unmissable, but to them, their brains just switched off from it. And it just so happened that one of the owners of the cottage was from round here where I'm from Teesside. And when she came back and visited her family, she said that she couldn't sleep for a few nights because the sound of the A19, a local motorway, was just so loud to her. Whereas I live a stone's throw away from that and I can never hear it. It's like going nose blind. When you're around a smell so much you can no longer smell it. Or the fact that your brain blanks out your nose even though it's always there. And I'm sorry to do that to you, but when you're around something all the time, it becomes so standard and so expected and so known that your brain just switches off from it. You don't need to notice anything because your brain already knows everything. But the opposite is true. So when you're in an unfamiliar place around things that you're not used to, your brain's running overtime. You notice everything. Your eyes see everything. You hear everything. You smell everything. You're in like a heightened state of awareness. So it's no wonder that photography feels different here. You're literally seeing different. Not even just seeing, it's all your senses. You're experiencing being differently. So if you're experiencing the world around you from a different perspective, I think it's pretty safe to assume that you're capturing the world around you from that different perspective as well. The photography doesn't feel different, it is different. And then of course there is making memories. The relationship between photography and memory is something that greatly interests me. I wrote an essay on that in uni, and it's a whole subject that you'll see some videos on that in the future. But I think they're intertwined so frequently. When you're on your travels, you're making memories. Guaranteed permanent memories. You don't remember what happened 23 weeks ago. You remember what happened on the week you were away. This year, last year, the one before. You remember those times. They are guaranteed to stick with you. Then, like I said earlier, I've got so many memories that are only as vivid as they are in my head because they're backed up by photos. In a way, I'm not remembering the events. I'm remembering the photos. It's a strange thing. It's only a recent phenomenon, of course. Photos only became so readily available to everyone in recent times, but it's almost as if our memories are greatly aided by evidence. So when there's a photo that took place within a memory, that photo just helps solidify that memory and make it more vivid and more concrete and way less forgettable. Obviously, when you combine guaranteed memories with the most powerful tool for memory making and documentation, you're going to get a memory powerhouse. When you're on your travels, you are literally taking photos that will become your memory. Like, they will be the images that your mind conjures up when you think back on those times. Now, obviously, these aren't the only things that contribute to the feeling of travel photography, but they are certainly the keystones in that wall, for me at least. Do add anything that contributes to that feeling for you down in the comments, because I know I will have missed a lot of things. This is a far more complex thing than I thought before I started making this video. I thought this would be a simple nut to crack, but it's just not. Also, if you can define the feeling of travel photography, if you can put that into words differently to how I did, then please do, because that was tricky to try and figure out. So you might be able to do it far better than I can. So we've figured out what that feeling is, and at least some of the main things that causes it. Well, I think back to that orange skied night, looking out over the water to the mountains, to the islands sat in the middle of nowhere in beautiful Scotland, thinking of the photos that I'd taken earlier in that day. And I asked myself in that moment, how can I feel this all the time in my photography? And I've figured it out. The answer is actually really simple. You can't. Just like when you were a kid and Christmas rolled around once a year and you were ecstatic for that whole festive period, it felt magic. There was an incredible feeling that came just for that limited time. And then the rest of the year it was gone. It's like that. They're the only times you get that feeling. Then you come back to normality and it's back to normality. So I think the only thing that you can do is enjoy it while it lasts. The only theory I've got for making such a feeling permanent is to travel for a lifestyle. Those who travel for a living or just have loads of trust fund money and travel for years and years on end, those are the only people that in my mind could potentially feel the feeling of travel photography permanently. But then even then I got a question to myself. We know that if you're around something all the time, you end up never noticing it. So surely if you had that feeling as a constant, you'd end up never feeling it, right? I don't know. And I doubt I will ever find out. If you couldn't tell, I love travel photography. I love going on holiday to new places and exploring that whole, it's that age of discovery kind of thing that I crave, and to take photos of that whole thing and create those solid memories all the way through, that is just something that I really, really enjoy. I don't know whether I'll just go on the odd holiday in the future or if I'll be lucky enough to be able to travel a lot. I guess we'll find out, but either way, I'm going to revel in those moments when I do get to feel that feeling, whether it's often or a rarity. But if you're watching this because you are soon to be going away and you plan on taking some photos, enjoy it. That's all you can do. I'm going to go and book the next holiday. Don't know where it'll be, maybe Scotland or Ireland. We'll see. Time for watching. I'll see you in the next one.